So you see a good number of signs around the campus today, both in English and in French. We are still awaiting the arrival of Marine One in the Charles River. We can see police boats. They have essentially cordoned off the Magazine Beach area, the landing ground for the helicopter. And the presidents will travel by motorcade across the BU Bridge and will then proceed to a holding area here at Boston University. BU, of course, won hands down the commencement speaker competition. The President of the United States and the President of France, same platform, same time.
I think it appealed to President Mitterrand that an American university celebrating its 150th anniversary was holding a commencement that coincided with the 200th anniversary of the French Revolution. And I think with Bush, he is a man who is committed to education and to the importance of education, and he had an invitation to speak at a major American university celebrating its 150th anniversary, and a university that is heavily involved in partnership programs between state, independent institutions, public and private institutions, the kind of volunteer mix that he is committed to.
That was Boston University President John Silber. I talked to him early last week and asked him the question, how do you end up with two heads of state at your commencement? There also is something else involved here. Let's bring Bill Keeler in on this from Boston University. Bill, you have a professor here at BU, Elie Wiesel, who is, of course, internationally known, a Nobel Peace Prize winner. He is very close to the Mitterrands. Fair to say that he had something to do with getting President Mitterrand here today?
I think it's fair to say that he had virtually everything to do with it. He is a very close friend of President Mitterrand and also a very close friend of President Silber. So he was clearly, if you will, the go-between to make this possible.
And Danielle Mitterrand, the president's wife, is also very active in the human rights field in France as well. As we await the arrival of the presidents, we can't go into specifics about the advances of the speeches we've seen, but certainly it's difficult today to imagine these two men not dealing with some of the divisions that exist in the European alliance. Terry?
Well, certainly they have some statements in the speeches, at least that President Bush will be giving, about some of the differences in the European alliance, and Bush places a great deal of emphasis upon the need to strengthen and to maintain the defense of the alliance. His major concern clearly is that with all the changes going on now in the Soviet Union, there might be a growth of complacency in the West about the need for defense. And the main emphasis in his speech certainly is of a fairly general nature about the necessity of maintaining the security of NATO in spite of all of the changes now occurring in the Soviet Union, while at the same time holding out an olive branch to the Soviet Union for new negotiations on forces in Europe.
Well, that's a delicate balance. Terry Hoppman from Brown University and Bill Keeler of Boston University joining us this morning at Nickerson Field. And our live coverage of the visit of the presidents will continue in a moment. Live from Nickerson Field, this is the visit of the presidents, George Bush, François Mitterrand, at Boston University's 116th commencement exercises. Good morning. If you're just joining us, we are awaiting the arrival at Magazine Beach of the two presidents who are coming from Mr. Bush's summer home in Kennebunkport, Maine. It's always fun to look back at the history books and try and sync up dates here. This is the 150th year of Boston University. This commencement occurs in the year of the 200th anniversary of the French Revolution, the 100th anniversary of the Eiffel Tower, that landmark in Paris. And today, 62 years ago today, Charles Lindbergh landed at Le Bourget Field in Paris, becoming the first person to solo, non-stop fly across the Atlantic. Funny how those things work out. And again, we are awaiting the arrival. Ron Sanders is standing by at Magazine Beach. We're told it's, what, 2 to 4 minutes away. Ron, maybe you can give us the lay of the land on that side of the Charles River.
RD, that's what we understand, that at about 10:25, actually it's 10:25 now, so any minute now, the President and President Mitterrand should be landing here at Magazine Beach. We've just been informed by a White House staff volunteer that the two first ladies are flying in one helicopter. Danielle Mitterrand and Barbara Bush are in one helicopter. The French President François Mitterrand and President Bush are in another helicopter. Two helicopters you saw land earlier, as you mentioned, RD, were bearing staff members and press. They've already touched down here. I'm checking to the west, which is the direction from which the staff helicopters landed. and I don't see them. You can hear a helicopter in the background. The state police helicopter is standing by for the landing. The president's helicopter was a little bit late leaving Kennebunkport this morning. He was supposed to have landed at 10:10 RD.
Vantage point here in the press box at Nickerson Field, we can see one of the Marine helicopters approaching Magazine Beach right now. Let's just stay with this. And
the helicopter is landing right now to the west of us, descending from an overcast sky this morning. We had understood earlier that 5 helicopters were to touch down here at Magazine Beach. This would be the 3rd. This helicopter, however, is different in marking than the first 2. It has what appears to be the presidential seal on the side and a white top. The Secret Service, as you know, RD, is rather guarded about exactly who is on which helicopter and exactly when they land. We had been expecting the president at 10:10. As soon as the engine of this helicopter shuts down, we'll get a look at who comes out of it. President Mitterrand had his staff members and entourage accompanying the White House staff members. Another helicopter is now approaching from the north. You can't see it, it's behind our camera position. But it is perhaps a quarter mile away from us right now, just about to land. More White House staff members are disembarking from the 3rd helicopter that just landed. And you can hear another helicopter overhead landing. Presumably, this is the helicopter bearing the 2 first ladies, Danielle Mitterrand and Barbara Bush. It's directly overhead now. And landing in a baseball field right on the Charles River, directly across the Charles from Nickerson Field, where both presidents will receive their honorary degrees and speak later. Getting a lot of wind, as you can see, RD. Wheels on this chopper should be down any moment. Initially, we had understood that President Mitterrand would be in the 4th helicopter landing here, and that President Bush would be in Marine One, the 5th and last helicopter to land. But as I mentioned a moment ago, we were informed by a White House staff volunteer the 2 first ladies are flying in the 4th helicopter.
Ron, we might point out here how carefully scouted these events are. The White House advance people, the security people for the French president have checked all of this out. Earlier this week, they were running touch-and-go landings with helicopters at Magazine Beach. And before anybody of any note gets out of any helicopter, it is a standard operating procedure that the security people do one final quick sweep of the area to make sure that all of their personnel are in place, that the area that the presidents will have to traverse from the helicopter to the automobiles is secure. So it might be another minute or 2 here before we actually see anybody leaving a chopper. I can see the other helicopter from our position now moving in. So
it's just crossing the Charles River now. You can see a Cadillac limousine on the opposite side of the 4th helicopter that landed. Has a tricolor and the stars and stripes on the front bumpers.
We might point out the people here in Nickerson Field noticed that chopper, the approach for this one, more or less over the stadium, and big cheer and some applause went up. The assumption being on the part of the people down here in the stands that this is the one.
RD, it's getting a little more noisy here right now, but the president's helicopter is just about directly over the landing threshold. It's about 20 feet off the ground, and as you can see, we're being blasted by the wash from the rotors on the helicopter. It's a little difficult for us to see our monitors, let alone the helicopter. The wheels are down now.
Again, the plan here is that the dignitaries will get into limousines and they will leave Magazine Beach and go across the BU Bridge, then onto Commonwealth Avenue, excuse me, and then to Nickerson Field. There's a holding area that's been set up here. We're told that President Bush will meet briefly with the Prime Minister of Malaysia. We're also told there may be an exchange of greetings involving Governor Dukakis, and of course we'll be keeping an eye out for that. You can see the Marine Guard who has left the front door of the helicopter, opening the back door. Usually there are key staff people who are coming out the back door, and the dignitaries out the front door. The presidential limousine now pulled up.
We expect this to be a rather swift affair, R.D. Glorified taxi service, one observer called it earlier.
Some taxi, right?
Glorified indeed. There's the president talking to the pilot and co-pilot in the cockpit of Marine One. Other staff members and military personnel disembarking. Here comes President Bush. Waving to the crowd waiting, President Mitterrand directly behind him. The two having finished their informal talks on the dispute over short-range missiles in Europe. Those talks taking place at Kennebunkport yesterday. President Mitterrand coming around to the left side of the limousine, getting in the back with President Bush, Secret Service agents swarming around them. President Mitterrand, R.D., as you know, spent the night in the cottage of President Bush's mother on the compound at Walker's Point in Kennebunkport.
It's now about 10:30 in the morning. The commencement ceremony here at Nickerson Field is due to be called to order at 11 a.m. Again, we will be with you live throughout the morning and early part of the afternoon with coverage of not only the ceremony here, but also the speeches by both heads of state. As you said, Ron, there is no ceremony to speak of really at Magazine Beach. That is a staging area, a landing area, and they're going to move to the holding tent that has been set up, and then inside some of the buildings here at BU. No fooling around here. As you can see, the Secret Service agents running alongside the automobile until it's underway in the motorcade. Also, standard operating procedure when the president makes an appearance that a security helicopter flies overhead. That chopper is now up and around and will shadow the motorcade all the way over to BU. Not a long ride.
Boston police car is leading.
They do not stop for traffic lights, as you may have noticed, Ron. President Bush later today will, according to the last schedule we saw, be traveling to Connecticut to visit his ailing mother in Greenwich, Connecticut, where he grew up, and still the family home in Greenwich. Both presidents arriving here after spending yesterday and last night at the Bush summer home in Kennebunkport, Maine. We're told that there was some discussion of the controversy over meeting the Soviet plan to withdraw some short-range missiles from the Warsaw Pact forces right up along the Western European borders. Mr. Bush has said that in the past, at least, that he has been unwilling to give up modernizing the Allied short-range missile force. Between helicopters and crowd noise and bands, it's been difficult to hear Ron Sanders over at Magazine Beach, but I gather, Ron, that everybody has left and is on the way to Nickerson Field. The graduates still marching into the arena, taking their seats. And again, 11 o'clock, the scheduled kickoff time here. We'll wait to see if that happens. The motorcade is underway. I can see the police helicopter now. The motorcade moving across the BU Bridge, heading toward Commonwealth Avenue. We'll be back with more of our live coverage of the visit of the presidents in a moment. Of the presidents, George Bush and François Mitterrand, continues. Good morning, if you're just joining us. The first order of this Sunday, the 21st of May, for President Bush was a visit to church. The president traveled by motorcade to the First Congregational Church up in Maine. President Mitterrand did not accompany Mr. Bush. After that, the two heads of state left Kennebunkport and Walker's Point on their way to Magazine Beach on the Cambridge side of the Charles River. And they have now arrived and are proceeding by motorcade to BU for the commencement ceremony, which is due to start at 11 a.m. today. Yesterday, the presidents enjoyed a day of diplomacy mixed with some relaxation as well. Discussions of the short-range nuclear missile controversy. Jerry D'Amico has more on what you might call the mini-summit in May.
The president stopped briefly just before President Mitterrand's morning arrival at the seaside compound to greet members of the French news media.
And the reason I wanted to have this meeting here at this place that means so much to Barbara and me is to refurbish that relationship and strengthen it on the personal basis.
Mr. Bush refused to answer questions about his talks with the French president or the situation in China. A helicopter carrying Mr. Mitterrand touched down at 11 a.m. President Bush greeted him and his wife with a hearty bienvenue. The two leaders posed for pictures but refused to answer questions before heading to the house. A few minutes later, the president's speedboat Fidelity was brought to the compound dock, prompting speculation the two might take a boat ride. They did later in the afternoon, after scheduled informal talks and a luncheon. The substance of the talks outlined later by Secretary of State Baker and French Foreign Minister Roland Dumas.
The President and President Mitterrand had excellent talks today. They thought that the West has seldom been in a stronger position. They discussed preparations for the NATO summit, and they expected NATO's 40th anniversary to be a successful and forward-looking event. The two presidents stressed the absolute need to maintain nuclear deterrence in Europe, and that we should concentrate now on conventional force negotiations.
Jerry D'Amico, News 7.
Those scenes from yesterday at Kennebunkport, Maine, the president's summer home, some relaxation between all the two heads of state. And again, live pictures of the platform here at Nickerson Field as the graduates of the class of '89 take their places as we wait for the official arrival and the beginning of the ceremonies at 11 a.m. French tricolor, the stars and stripes, flying high over the stadium today. And down there with the graduates, Amalia Burrell. Amalia?
You know, R.D., this school started out as a tiny Methodist seminary more than 150 years ago, and today it is the 5th largest independent institution of higher learning in the country. We usually hear about BU happenings as they relate to the outspoken president, Dr. John Silver. However, this place has really been a controversial trendsetter from the very beginning. University first opened its doors in this city in 1839 on Beacon Hill. The first president, William Warren, caused quite a ruckus by making BU the first coeducational school in Massachusetts.
And that was considered quite scandalous. And we admitted people from immigrant groups. That was considered scandalous.
Kathleen Kilgore, who researched and just finished a book on BU's history, says she was surprised by the depth of the university's activism and involvement in social problems.
There's always been that feeling of involvement with students who couldn't go to college otherwise.
BU moved to its present location in the 1920s when it began buying up all these old townhouses along Bay State Road. It was pretty much the outskirts of town back then, and it wasn't a very good neighborhood. Now, of course, BU owns some of the most exquisite real estate around. In 1939, the rest of the campus began to take shape. After World War II, Kilgore says the university caused a commotion again by embracing the GI Bill.
Many other educators warned against it. They said that this would dilute the value of higher education if we simply opened up to all these people who were qualified but didn't have the money.
We're going to walk together.
GIs weren't the only ones invited. Kilgore says it was no accident that Martin Luther King went to BU.
This was a place where minorities were welcome and where they were actively recruited. And this was in great contrast to many other universities in the 50s where the focus was on the fear of the left, the fear of involvement, the fear of activism, and that didn't happen here.
In keeping with its revolutionary traditions, the 60s hit the school with a vengeance, disrupting its climate, but never its purpose.
It was wild here, and yet there still was good education going on at this place. It was never totally disrupted.
There was, however, another harsh reality threatening the very life of the university itself. In 1970, a new president was elected to fix BU's dire financial problems. John Silver has been exceptional in carrying on the school's controversial activist tendencies, From the beginning, the intense philosopher and educator had a clear-cut vision.
And I outlined what I thought was the recipe for Boston University's survival, which was, in fact, a plan for its fulfillment, that its ability to survive into the future, into the next century, depended upon its becoming an absolutely top-class university.
The recipe worked so well, BU went from local school to international institution. The well-publicized growing pains during the Silber regime have been substantial, but when you consider its history, BU's present and future course is right in line with its past. All right, back now with Professor David Claytel. And I guess given its history, it is no surprise that the university was able to attract two sitting presidents to come to the commencement exercises for the first time ever.
No, I don't think that's really surprising. This university has always prided itself on being very bold, very aggressive, sometimes boldly and aggressively correct, in some cases perhaps boldly and courageously incorrect. John Silber, more importantly, the Board of Trustees of this university, many of whom predate John Silber, brought him here, brought the previous presidents here. They're the people that have taken the risks. They're the people that have led the university into a feeling that it ought to take an aggressive public posture on not only educational issues, but on societal issues. You'll see, for example, Arthur Metcalf, the chairman of the board, a major manufacturer of electronics, a major benefactor of this university. And in many people believe the real power behind the throne. Much attention is focused on John Silber, but when your viewers look up on the podium today and see the banks of distinguished-looking men and women sitting behind the podium guests, those are the people that really run the university, that make the major financial decisions, that hire and fire presidents, and it's those people that have really given the university its public vision.
What's the feeling from within now as a member of the BU community? What is the feeling from within at having this tradition here at Boston University?
Oh, I think everybody's very proud and excited to have them here. Personally, I like commencements. I'm a bit of a commencement junkie. I think it's fun to see the students dressed up for the first time in 4 years. It's nice to see them go out into the real world. And I think it's a great honor to the students as well as the institution that the two presidents have chosen to come. I know this is a day the students will remember, and even a few old jaded faculty members will actually admit to having enjoyed this tremendously.
You know, an interesting tidbit that you just told me was how a lot of the women toss the tennis shoes and actually put heels on.
Yes, this is, I don't know if this is probably a health and safety problem, but most of the young women in the graduating class dress up for the first time in years, and with their parents in the audience, often take that pair of high-heeled shoes out of the box where their parents gave it to them 4 years ago and totter around rather uncertainly. Later in the day, there's going to be another set of commencement exercises for the individual colleges, much smaller, more intimate graduation ceremonies at all the different schools and colleges. And unfortunately, several times every spring, one or two young women, rather uncertain on her feet, stumbles off the platform because her high heels give out on her, or her ankles do.
Also, they have chaperones among them, I presume, for better behavior among the presidents.
Yes, they do. The university asked for faculty volunteers to sprinkle themselves among the students. Perhaps their presence would enforce some sense of decorum. I'm not sure if choosing faculty members is the right way to assure decorum, but they're going to give it a try.
All right, thanks very much. Now, we are literally surrounded by robes now, and I might say that it is a very joyous occasion down here, a joyous kind of feeling. When the president's helicopter flew overhead, there was a lot of cheering. I might add that there is a bit of protest here. On a lot of the mortarboards is the message "Bush knew," of course, an obvious reference to the Iran-Contra affair. Back to you, R.D.
Thank you, Amalia. I also suspect that there is a bit, maybe university officials are wondering, what do we do to follow this? And after all, two heads of state. The visit of the presidents. Our live coverage continues from Nickerson Field in a moment. There you see the seal of the President of the United States. Now about 10 minutes to 11. At the top of the hour, we are expecting the beginning of the commencement ceremonies here at Boston University, with honorary degrees being conferred upon President George Bush of the United States, President François Mitterrand of France, and we will hear from both of them as well. Good morning again from Nickerson Field. I'm R.D. Saul. News 7 coverage of the visit of the presidents continues. Joining us this morning, Professor Terrence Hoffman from Brown University and Professor William Keeler from Boston University, both men conversant in French-U.S. relations and European politics in general. Bill, Let's start with you a moment. We've talked a bit about this disagreement in the NATO alliance about the short-range arsenal. What's at work here is that President Bush has said, I want to see movement on conventional force negotiations before I put these short-range nuclear missiles on the table in any way. That is at odds with what many in Europe are saying.
That's right, exactly, R.D. The President believes, as do most American strategists believe, that these short-range missiles are absolutely essential to the West unless they can get the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact to reduce their conventional forces to parity with NATO. And the slogan is, no nukes, no troops. That is, if we can't have these short-range nuclear missiles to protect our troops, then the troops might no longer be there.
Terry Hoppin, President Mitterrand of France said when he met with Prime Minister Mulroney in Canada when he first arrived in the States Friday, or in North America Friday, that he thought there was some accommodation possible here. What do you see Mitterrand's role in trying to find some ground here to move forward on arms talks?
Well, I think the key thing that they're trying to do right now actually is to slow the process down a little bit and to prevent having to make any immediate decisions that might be embarrassing either to President Bush or to German Chancellor Kohl. So what we're seeing right now, I think, is an attempt to develop some sort of a compromise which will delay the modernization of missiles that the United States wants to modernize, and yet not lead to their immediate negotiation for withdrawal until after, as Bill says, there's been some progress on the conventional area.
In a world where perception is often reality, there is certainly the perception that Gorbachev and the Soviet Union are setting the agenda on this topic.
Clearly they are. They've taken the lead on this. It's taken the United States so long with the change in administrations to decide what its policy will be. And until the United States decides what its policy is going to be about arms control in Europe, NATO is not going to be able to make many decisions. NATO presumably will start making those decisions next week, but it takes a complex alliance like NATO much, much longer than it does the Soviet Union to decide on policies of this character.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I think the solution might be to create a committee in NATO to deal with this rather than try to deal with it between now and when the alliance has its summit at the end of the month.
Okay, thank you, Bill Keeler. Terry Hoppin, we'll be checking back with you throughout the morning. The motorcade left Magazine Beach some time ago. Presidents Bush and Mitterrand proceeding to the holding area here at Boston University, and there was a meeting, as you can see. Both presidents, and that is Arthur Metcalf of BU. Pause here to see if we can hear what they're saying. Governor Dukakis, George Kavarian, the Speaker of the Massachusetts House, Mayor Flynn of Boston, Bernard Cardinal Law of the Boston Archdiocese, John Westling from BU, There's a mortarboard with a message, I'm going to Disney World. Well, everybody has to be someplace, I guess. As Boston University looks at the money spent on this commencement, the United States and France look at the economic opportunities afforded by the meeting at Kennebunkport between Mr. Bush and Mitterrand. News 7's financial reporter Marianne Kane has been looking at the possibilities.
President François Mitterrand's visit appears to offer little risk and tremendous opportunity, specifically rare business opportunities for the socialist government, which since 1983 has been liberalizing the economy and privatizing French industry. Unlike in the past, French business is now aggressive and forward-thinking. The nation's share of world exports grew significantly from 1986 to 87. French business expert Janice McCormick says the old prejudices about French business are gone.
The image was that France was the nation of what we call the 3 Fs, fashion, fragrance, and food. And anything else they probably weren't very good at.
That has changed. Business is in, and the French are looking for windows of opportunity.
And that is opportunities for joint ventures, opportunities for cross-national alliances.
This company, Honeywell Bull, may very well be an example of France's future. French interests hold majority ownership, along with United States and Japanese participation. Billerica headquartered Bull is a $2 billion computer manufacturer that employs 25,000 worldwide. The international ownership is innovative.
I think that not only in our industry, but other industries, we're finding that companies are seeing the advantages of sharing technology, sharing marketing, sharing image, and the name of the game will be find a partner and go at the world with someone else.
Dotlich believes the French are seeking high-tech partners, which is of strategic importance to New England's high-tech industry.
I think they have a national priority to emphasize high-tech development and high-tech as a business in society, and I think that's good.
Good particularly in 1992 when the European Economic Community drops its barriers and becomes one market. France will be at the forefront. French expert Pierre Laurent.
France has become, under Mitterrand, along with Kohl's Federal Republic, that is the West Germans, the nexus of the economic leadership of the European community. And the essence of it there is, I think, that increasingly this will mean competition.
Mitterrand is aware of his new strength. New England business people hope that his trip to Boston indicates a spirit of economic cooperation. Marianne Kane, News 7.
And now about 5 minutes away from the call to order here at Commencement 89 at Boston University. And our News 7 coverage of the visit of the presidents will be right back. Let's go down to the field and Amalia Barretta. Amalia?
RD, the BU campus has undergone a total facelift in preparation for this event. Everything from new matching flower beds to a new stage on Nickerson Field. News 7's Andrew Frayne has a look at the last few days of the mad dash to get ready.
Hundreds of workers have been at this all week, setting up platforms, wiping down seats, erecting the sound system and media telephone lines, and building the stage where President and Mrs. Bush and French President François Mitterrand will sit before some 3,000 Boston University graduates on Sunday.
Everyone is at a fever pitch. All the staffs of all the departments at the university are very excited and are playing a role in this commencement exercise, and we're frankly quite thrilled.
Nothing has been left untouched. Every flower bed is full and there is a fresh coat of paint on every surface. Over in the kitchens, more preparations. They're working on elaborate meals for at least 5 different functions following the graduation exercises. Off campus, still more activity. At Brookline Coal and Ice, Eric Fontecchio puts the finishing touches on a 17-foot ice sculpture for one luncheon. What better symbol for Franco-American relations? Making sure the two world leaders are safe during commencement exercises has proven to be a logistical nightmare. As soon as classes were over on Tuesday, students were cleared out of the dorms overlooking the field, and all the door locks changed. Boston University is sparing no expense to make everything look perfect. No one is saying what the final tab will run, but Miss Liberty may give you an idea. The statue alone costs $6,000 to $7,000. And she's just one of 10 sculptures BU has ordered to make this the commencement of the season. I'm Andrew Frayne, News 7.
Now, the stage here at Nickerson Field, which you see behind me, I am told is a permanent one. One question that remains unanswered, nobody wants to talk about it, is how much did all of this cost? Everybody's having too much of a good time to talk about it. Back to you, RD.
Yes, Amalia, it looks as if it's a war between decorum and exuberance down there as some students try and get the wave going.
Right.
Not Fenway Park this morning. It is, of course, Nickerson Field. 11 a.m. is the time, we are told, for the official call to order of the commencement. All morning, entertainment has been provided by the Boston University Alumni Concert Band. The academic procession was provided by the Empire Brass. The presidential procession coming up, the Atlantic Brass Quintet. All of the trivia that is passed on to you when you cover one of these events live, and you wait for the live event to come to life. It's now raining very, very lightly. You can see a smattering of umbrellas out in the crowd. There had been possibility of some rain in the forecast, although the predictions were it would hold off until a bit later in the day. A few more umbrellas popping up. Everybody, I think, probably saw the weather forecast. Looks like a lot of people came prepared. A few drops hitting us up here in our anchor position in the press box overlooking Nickerson Field. With us this morning, Terry Hopman from Brown University and Bill Keeler from Boston University. One of the other issues in French-American relations, certainly an economic issue, that's trade. We're looking at the unity of Western Europe coming in 1992. Right now, it's a formidable economic force. Will become even more so. What are the implications of that vis-a-vis the United States? Terry, let's start with you.
Well, clearly there's a great deal of concern in the United States that a new unified Europe might will completely eliminate tariff barriers within Europe, but might construct higher tariff barriers or other non-tariff barriers to trade, to imports of U.S. goods into the European community. And the Bush administration, of course, is very much opposed to protectionism in any form, and clearly will make any effort possible over the next 3 or 4 years to see to it that the new integration of the European community does not set up new obstacles for American goods.
Bill Keeler, I suppose it's one of the ironies here that the country that essentially rebuilt the industrial base of Western Europe following World War II is now faced with this behemoth in Europe that really is a very big challenge.
That's right, Artie, absolutely. It also supported the creation of the common market in the 1950s. The United States gave very strong support to European integration, and now it faces the prospect of a very tough trade rival when it becomes a genuinely integrated community in 1992.
May 29th, President Bush goes to the NATO summit. We talk a lot about the NATO alliance, the European New World alliance following World War II. Is that alliance weakening as Europe comes more and more into its own as one entity, Bill?
Well, I think if anything is weakening the NATO alliance, it's the decline in the credibility of American extended deterrence. That is, many people in Western Europe are now worried about the fact that given the Soviet Union's achievement of nuclear parity with the United States, that the United States will really not, in the last analysis, make good on its pledge to risk full-scale nuclear war on behalf of Europe. I think that's the major contributing factor to the weakness of the alliance.
Terry, is there some thought that the fundamental reasoning behind beginning NATO is somehow different now, that we are looking at a regime in the Soviet Union that, at least to observance, at least when you look at what's happening there appears to be some changes, that Gorbachev is realizing he can't continue spending anywhere between 15 and 25% of his gross national product on the military.
Right. There certainly is a growing feeling in Europe that Gorbachev represents a very fundamental change in Soviet policy, and particularly if Gorbachev does implement some of his pledged unilateral cuts, I think we will see an increasing feeling in Europe that NATO has outlived its usefulness, that it was a useful and important alliance to create back in 1949, but that by 1989, 40 years later, one might almost say it has succeeded in its major goal. Changes have occurred in the Soviet Union. The threat to the alliance has reduced, and it is indeed the threat from outside that is the primary source of glue or cohesion within any alliance. And so, as that threat diminishes, also one expects to see more conflicts and differences appear within an alliance like NATO.
Bill, the other side of that coin is don't rush into anything. That while Gorbachev has said we're going to withdraw unilaterally, 500 short-range nuclear weapons from the Warsaw Pact, the point is they're not being destroyed. They remain in the arsenal.
That's right, absolutely. We did have peaceful coexistence in the 1950s. We had détente in the 1970s, and yet reversion to the Cold War occurred after each of those events. So I'm very hopeful that the Cold War is over, but I think we better keep our powder dry.
Politically, François Mitterrand is a man who succeeded in organizing the leftist political movements in France to win a majority back in 1981 and to get elected. He is a socialist. Certainly the Communist Party in France is a very big party. Is the Communist Party in France like the Communist Party in the Soviet Union? Bill Keeler.
Well, I think that the big news about the French Communist Party is that although it was a powerful and influential force in French politics since the end of World War II, Mitterrand's coming to power has, in effect, and I'll use the word advisedly, destroyed the French Communist Party as a significant force. That is, he has created a non-communist left that has won an extraordinary amount of support from voters who earlier had supported the French Communist Party.
Nearly 55% in the election last May.
Exactly. So I think the French Communist Party today is a marginal force, and I think you can credit François Mitterrand with having achieved that result.
But Terry Hoffman, Mitterrand has also moved to the right. As we said earlier, he has abandoned his early attempts in his administration to nationalize some major industries and some of the big banks. He has become more conservative. He has moved toward the middle, essentially. Does that give the Communist Party in France new life, saying, look, we've been abandoned by the guy we helped elect?
It may give some strength to some of the more radical elements of the Communist Party, but I think Bill is quite right that overall the Communist Party has been weakened significantly. It's interesting to note that in the first 3 or 4 years of the Mitterrand administration, there were 4 Communist Party members in the French cabinet, in his government, who were elected with him as part of the coalition. and came into office as a consequence of that. Once the Mitterrand government, though, began to move a bit more towards the right as a result of the failure of the French economy to take off, after all, the French were caught in what was pretty much a worldwide recession in the late 70s and early 80s, which made it very difficult for Mitterrand to succeed in achieving his economic goals. We saw the communists eliminated from the government. We eventually, of course, saw Mitterrand lose a majority in the French National Assembly and have a prime minister for a time, Jacques Chirac, from the opposite party, from the remnants of the old Gaullist political forces. So French politics have kind of moved back and forth, and Mitterrand himself has moved with that changing political climate.
Another defense issue. France, of course, has an independent nuclear force, what Charles de Gaulle called the force de frappe, as I recall. How does François Mitterrand play that card in the context of U.S.-Soviet arms talks and within the context of the NATO alliance?
The French position on arms control has been very interesting. In many ways, although, of course, Mitterrand originally came to power as a major opponent to de Gaulle, he has maintained a great deal of consistency with the Gaullist tradition in military policy. And basically, the French position on nuclear weapons is that they refuse to talk about negotiating any reductions in French nuclear forces until everyone else comes down to their size. In other words, really, until France becomes a great power equivalent to the United States and the Soviet Union, the French are not really prepared to talk about any reductions of their own nuclear forces, at least. In that sense,
uniquely Gallic.
It is very uniquely Gallic and very much Gaullist in that sense. In spite of his early political opposition to de Gaulle, in this area at least, he's really maintained de Gaulle's policy.
Live pictures here. This is the holding area tent where the security forces and the presidents are gathered as we await the beginning of the commencement ceremony here at Nickerson Field. On the field, Amalia Beretta. Amalia?
R.D., everything really pretty quiet here. Obviously, everybody anticipating the arrival of the presidents and the committee of the board.
The executive committee of the Board of Trustees. The president of the university, the provost, the senior vice presidents, and the chairman of the board will lead out the presidents and the other invited dignitaries.
And that is the traditional way that it's done.
That is the traditional way, that's right. The people that are on the podium now are deans, senior administrators, a few lower-ranking members of the Board of Trustees, and the senior executive members of the board, the people who really make the decisions, will be coming out to lead the honored guests onto the podium.
Little bit of information that even you didn't know, Professor Claytel, that we talked about a little bit earlier. The university, as I understand it, never used to give honorary degrees in the beginning until 1929. I understand they gave the first one to a Frenchman, to Field Marshal Foch. And I understand that it was quite a big deal when he came at that time. I don't know how you measure it. The historian who told me, Kathleen Kilgore, told me that it was a much bigger deal at that time than this is today. And there is the announcement.
Dr. Arthur G.B. Metcalf, Chairman of the Board of Boston University. Dr. Mahathir, Prime Minister of Malaysia.
All right, the executive committee coming in now. I see the red hat of cardinal law, of course. That's what stands out the most. R.D., you can probably get a better view from up there.
Yes, Amalia, this is the academic procession. Professor Dr. John Silver and Arthur Metcalf, Chairman of the Board of Trustees, leading the procession to the platform this morning. Governor Dukakis, Elie Wiesel, and Cardinal Law. Wiesel, a Nobel Peace Prize winner, survivor of the Holocaust. And so we are underway at 10 minutes after 11. On Sunday, the 21st of May, 1989, the visit of the presidents at Boston University. There will be some academic rituals that will precede the conferral of the honorary degrees and the speeches by the presidents. We will have the invocation from Elie Wiesel, who is the Andrew W. Mellon Professor in the Humanities.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, and Mrs. Bush, and the President of the Republic of France, and Mrs. Mitterrand.
And a mighty cheer goes up. The visit of the presidents underway at Boston University. Now, there are three people who look like they're having a good time this morning. President and Mrs. Mitterrand. This is Arthur Metcalf, the man with the white beard, the chairman of the Board of Trustees, and he will make the call to order this morning.
The 116th commencement of Boston University is now in order. Will you please remain standing for the national anthems of France and the United States, which will be led by Nancy Joachim, an alumna of Boston University School for the Arts. Please stand.
The Star-Spangled Banner and La Marseillaise here at Nickerson Field.
Please be seated. On this historic occasion in Boston University's sesquicentennial year, on behalf of the Board of Trustees, I welcome our distinguished guests, the President of the French Republic, François Mitterrand, and Madame Mitterrand. The President of the United States, George Bush, and the First Lady, Barbara Bush. The Prime Minister of Malaysia, Dr. Mahathir. His Excellency Michael Dukakis, Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The invocation will be delivered by Professor Elie Wiesel, University Professor and Nobel Laureate for Peace. Thereafter, President John Silver will preside over the ceremonies.
Our Father in heaven, please keep the rain for next 2 hours. God of Abraham, help us when we need help. Dieu d'Abraham, viens au secours des hommes quand les hommes ont besoin de secours. God of Isaac, be with us when we are alone. Dieu d'Isaac, sois avec nous quand les hommes sont seuls. God of Jacob, listen to our prayer when we feel betrayed by the complicity of silence. Dieu de Jacob, reçois nos prières quand c'est le silence qui nous trahit. What brings us together today, students and teachers, parents and children, and our distinguished guests from Washington and Paris and scores of other cities, is the desire to celebrate learning and exalt its virtues. As you, graduating students, leave one another, may we, your teachers, ask you to remember the mysterious weight of gratitude. Gratitude towards your parents for their love and sacrifice, towards your teachers for their generosity, and gratitude towards your friends for their friendship. May we also tell you of our hope. May your quest for knowledge become a passion for justice. May your newly acquired authority to speak move you to speak for victims of malediction and misfortune. Power is to be shared, not imposed. Freedom must be extolled, not ridiculed. Education must be used for humanity, not against it. Not to obtain power, but to humanize it. Not to impose your will or your views on others, but to discover theirs in an atmosphere of respect and understanding. Remember, students, this year, remember every person everywhere reflects the image of the Creator who has no image. Every person everywhere can destroy worlds or redeem them. Remember that redemption justifies humanity's hope. Destruction betrays it. Remember, like everything else, words can hurt or heal, elevate or humiliate, bring the heavens down into the mud, or lift the dust and transform it into stars. It depends on you, and mostly on you, whether they become swords of hate or prayers for compassion. May you, graduating students, and some of you are my friends, may you, through your work and life, justify the faith that we, your elders, have placed in you, for you are our future.
Professor here at BU, survivor of the Holocaust, winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, close friend of both BU President John Silber and the President of France, François Mitterrand. This is John Silber, President of BU.
President Bush, Mrs. Bush, President Mitterrand, Madame Mitterrand, Prime Minister Mahathir, Your Excellency Governor Dukakis, Your Eminence, members of the faculty, graduates, parents, guests, and friends. Welcome to the sesquicentennial commencement of Boston University. I now present Kimberly Ann Sudnick, a graduating senior from the College of Liberal Arts, who will speak on behalf of the senior class. Miss Sudnick.
Kimberly Sudnick, one of the 5,200 people receiving degrees today. She is from Longmeadow, Massachusetts.
Thank you, President Silber. I'm sharing this special day with you today because 4 years ago, I took a risk. My family didn't want me to venture to a city school, but I knew that I needed to learn and grow in ways that would have been impossible close to home. What's easy and safe is not necessarily best. I'm not sure why I knew that years ago, but I'm sure now that I was right. And it was Boston University that taught me this lesson well. The quality of education here is excellent, but by that, I don't mean simply that the course catalog is large and diverse. There's more to a good education than a course catalog or even the content of a course. Essential to a good education is challenge. Our professors have tried to do more than convey information. They were trying to teach us to think critically, to explore, in short, to take risks with ideas. For children, the written word is truth, but for us, the written word is the labor of a thinking person, and we as thinking people have an obligation to evaluate and analyze. For children, the written word has no source, but for us, the written word is the work and the labor of a thinking person. In our papers and classroom discussions, we have learned to challenge systems, arguments, conclusions, hypotheses, and results, because that is the road to truth. It is by challenging existing knowledge that new knowledge is uncovered. In physics, Newton unseated Aristotle, and Einstein overthrew Newton. As the economist Samuelson once said, funeral by funeral, theory progressed. Critical thinking involves risk, and it's hard at first to take a chance. My freshman psychology course, the professor started each class with a question period, and he would not begin his lecture until at least one substantive question was asked. We sat there sometimes for several minutes in awkward silence. This year, my senior year, I took a philosophy course in which the professor offered extra credit to students who challenged him. I'm happy to say that a great deal of extra credit was awarded. As I see it now, the classroom experience was good preparation for what's to come, for critical thinking and risk-taking are fundamental to success in life. When you search for your first job, you have to take risks and think quickly, and your first good job will be the first one that challenges you. The real contributions that you make, whether as teachers or therapists or engineers, will come from the risks that you take. Creativity in the arts, invention and innovation in business and industry, discoveries in the laboratory, all are the result of taking risks with ideas. As we explore and challenge, we'll not always succeed, But when we fail, we must challenge again in a different and more effective way, for that is the path to success. The eminent philosopher and psychologist William James once said, "It is only by risking our persons from one hour to another that we live at all." Fellow graduates, take risks, think, challenge, for then you will live and live well.
Class of '89, Boston University, from Longmeadow, Massachusetts. Tremendous poise in front of more than 30,000 people today.
This sesquicentennial commencement is the occasion of the 16th presentation of the Metcalf Cup and Prize for Excellence in Teaching, made possible by a gift of Dr. Arthur G.B. Metcalf, an alumnus, former faculty member, trustee, and now chairman of the Board of Trustees of Boston University. The purpose of these awards is to establish a systematic procedure to review the quality of teaching and to identify and reward those members of the faculty of Boston University who excel as teachers. These awards are a tangible symbol of the university's commitment to scholarship and teaching of the highest order. Dr. Metcalf will make the presentations to the winner. Will Dean Robert Neville present the winner of the Metcalf Award for Excellence in Teaching?
Mr. President, I have the honor to present Professor Catherine Pfisterer Dar, the winner of a 1989 Metcalf Award.
Catherine Pfisterer Dar, a student in the School of Theology's course in Biblical Hebrew, writes that you have an amazing ability to work our socks off without intimidating us. At the same time that she was teaching us the Hebrew alphabet, she was also telling us the stories that accompany each letter. We learned to love and respect the language. For most of her students, Hebrew will be an essential tool in their lives as ministers. Her students learn not only to read Hebrew scripture accurately and astutely, they learn that logic, historical awareness, and critical thinking will neither vitiate nor stunt their faith, but rather strengthen and sharpen it. The result, a student writes, is faith with breadth and depth of understanding. Students note that Professor Dar is first and foremost prepared, and that each assignment she gives can later be seen to have been crucial to the learning process. The single word most often used by both students and colleagues to describe Professor Dar is inspirational. The passion, strength, and commitment with which Professor Dar teaches, says a colleague, should be an inspiration to us all. And a former student, now a minister, pays her the highest of compliments in saying, "I thank God that I had the chance to learn from Professor Dar." Will Dean Dennis Berkey present the winner of the Metcalf Award for Excellence in Teaching?
Mr. President, I have the honor to present Professor John Schneider for a 1989 Metcalf Award.
Professor Schneider is an artist in teaching the subject he clearly loves, the organic chemistry of natural products. He will describe, for instance, how certain plants produce natural insecticides that are non-toxic to humans, but how their effectiveness deteriorates rapidly in sunlight. Professor Schneider will then show his class how organic chemists, once they understand the compound, can make it less sensitive to light and thus longer lasting. And he will go on to explain the fundamental principles of organic chemistry essential to the understanding of this compound. One student says, "What I had anticipated as the drear rite of passage through organic chemistry turned out to be a truly enjoyable learning experience, full of intellectual challenge. Professor Snyder presents highly technical material with rapidity and energy, filling the chalkboards with diagrams and citing references. Yet, he would patiently rephrase everything," says one student, "until he was satisfied that we were all back on his level. Professor Snyder's examinations," says another, "were among the most difficult that I encountered at the university, but were fair, requiring not rote memory and regurgitation of lecture notes, but the processing of what you knew. Professor Snyder," writes a colleague, "epitomizes a teaching function that is uniquely important in the sciences, mentorship. He plants the seed and turns on the light. He is repeatedly singled out by his students as the one who has made the difference." And one of his students says, if being an outstanding teacher means to challenge and to motivate students towards excellence, then Dr. Snyder is an outstanding teacher. Will Dean Colin Diver present the winner of the 1989 Metcalf Cup and Prize?
Mr. President, I have the honor to present Professor Francis H. Miller, the winner of the 1989 Metcalf Cup and Prize.
We're watching the awarding of the Metcalf Cup and Prize for excellence in teaching. Some of the preliminaries leading up to the
Professor
conferral
Miller's
of the honorary
classroom
degree.
surges with intellectual electricity. For more than 20 years, she has, with energy and rigor, exposed the social, economic, and moral components of legal issues. She reveals the great human questions that underlie the precision and nuances of legal language. Her students learn not only to thread the mazes of trusts and wills, but to understand how law arises out of the fears and hopes of people contemplating their own mortality. Professor Miller has the rarest of academic reputations, that of a hard grader whose courses are a must. Hundreds of students come to class ready not only to listen but to participate. Professor Miller often adopts the Socratic method, leading a student from unexamined assumptions or formulations to the unanticipated but disastrous general rule that would logically follow. Students not only learn how they went wrong, but are challenged and inspired to try again. Her unyielding demands for precision and logic are mediated by humor, warmth, and encouragement. Both in and out of class, students find Professor Miller the most accessible, concerned, and helpful of teachers. Writes one, her investment in students' work motivates them to invest themselves and to produce not just adequate writing, but the best work they can. Former students practicing law in fields far removed from her own acknowledge her important influence on their careers. A former student writes of Professor Miller, she loves to teach. The felicitous combination of love of teaching and academic excellence makes her one of the great assets of the university.
Now on the program, we come to the conferral of honorary degrees. First Lady Barbara Bush.
Ladies and gentlemen, this morning we are honored to have as our guest Madame Danielle Mitterrand, née Gouze. I should like to ask the Executive Vice President of Boston University and our trustee, Dr. Esther Hopkins, to escort Madame Mitterrand to the podium.
Seeing a bit of the protocol of this affair this morning. Madame Mitterrand also receiving notice and honor of receiving the applause of the crowd. And the award she will be given this morning was actually added to the program last night.
This year, as all of you know, is the 150th anniversary of Boston University's founding, our sesquicentenary. Boston University has been, from its beginning, dedicated to the proposition that every human being, regardless of race or sex or religion, must be given every opportunity to maximize his or her full potential. This has also been the guiding principle in Madame Mitterrand's life. As a young woman, she risked imprisonment and death to defend human liberty as a fighter in the Maquis, the French resistance to the unspeakable inhumanity of the Nazis. Since the days in which she defied the Nazi invaders and occupiers of her homeland, she has worked with great dedication to ensure that the dehumanization and barbarism that she fought then should never be allowed to rise again. She has traveled through the world to support the cause of freedom and the dignity of the individual, with special attention to the rights of minorities, women, and third world people. She founded and has served with distinction as the president of France Liberté, an organization dedicated to advancing human rights throughout the world. It is therefore most appropriate that we should recognize this remarkable person during this auspicious year in our history. By order of the trustees of Boston University, I am honored to present to her the first Boston University sesquicentenary medallion. Ladies and gentlemen, Madame Danielle Mitterrand.
John Silber referred to Madame Mitterrand's involvement in the French resistance in World War II. It was, in fact, in the resistance that she met her husband, François Mitterrand.
We will now present candidates for honorary degrees. Will Trustee Esther Kahn escort our honored guest to the podium?
First Lady Barbara Bush, very active in the literacy movement in the United States. Clearly enjoying her day on the platform at Boston University.
Barbara Bush, you have shown us how a life of intense dedication to family can be expanded into a life of exceptional service to the community and to the nation. Your efforts on behalf of literacy, of single mothers, of cancer research and treatment, of AIDS patients and the homeless have been tireless and innovative. You have not been content merely to lend your name to various worthy endeavors. You have not been content to establish and guide such institutions as the Foundation for Family Literacy. You have not been content with making speeches, creating programs, fundraising, and administering. You have gone beyond all these to make an extended family of all those who are in need of help. You have personally served and befriended children stricken with cancer, adults facing illness and death, mothers grieving for children who have been killed, and unwed mothers and their children who think that no one cares. You have not only mobilized national resources, you have helped with your own hands, your own heart, person to person, face to face. Your life has been given both to public benevolence and to those little, nameless, unremembered acts of kindness and of love, of which the poet Wordsworth speaks. In all you have done, there has been graciousness, warmth, candor, wit, and dignity. You have been yourself. You remind us by your daily example that the only style worth anything is the style that reveals the substance. And you are still yourself in your new home at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, not only First Lady, but First Mother. Your compassion and your concern for family have endeared you to all of us. Boston University is proud to confer upon you the degree Doctor of Humane Letters, honoris causa.
The ceremonies here running about 15 minutes behind schedule. Next, the conferral of the honorary degree on the President of France, François Mitterrand.
Will Professor Elie Wiesel escort our honored guest to the podium?
As we have noted, Professor Wiesel, a close friend of President Mitterrand.
François Mitterrand, 2 centuries ago, in the same week in spring, the American Revolution ended with the inauguration of George Washington, and the French Revolution began with the convening of the Estates General. French aid had been crucial in winning the American Revolution, and our peoples have ever since maintained a fascinated and mutually critical amity, best described by the French word cousinage. We are cousins, and it was as cousin among cousins that an American soldier stood in Paris on July 4th, 1917, and declared, "Lafayette, we are here." France faced the gravest dangers of her long history just as you reached manhood. You were at her side, spilling your blood on the ancient battlefield of Verdun, escaping from a prison camp to return to France, and the lessons you learned then, that freedom is not free, that those who accept dishonor to avoid war will get both, that military strength is the price of peace, have guided your conduct of French foreign policy. You have stood for a vital, independent France that is also a leader in the creation of a new Europe, and you have completed the reconciliation between France and Germany begun by your predecessors. Defender of human rights and the sanctity of the individual, you have earned, as few world leaders since the end of the Second World War, the name of statesman. In domestic policy, you have, in the spirit of Montesquieu, presided over the evolution toward a two-party system, effectively reshaping the political landscape of France in ways that help fulfill the promise of the revolution. The challenges you have made on the face of Paris, the changes you have made there are among the most dramatic since the days of Baron Haussmann. The new entrance to the Louvre, the Musée d'Orsay, the Opéra Bastille, and now taking shape on the drawing boards of architects and in the chips of computer programmers, the Bibliothèque de France exemplify a dedication to glory in cultural institutions and in the buildings that house them that is archetypically French, limited by no bounds of dynasty or party. Writer, intellectual, soldier, statesman, you are a true son of the mother of arts, of arms, and of laws. Boston University, which granted its first honorary degree to Ferdinand Foch, Marshal of France, now proudly confers upon you the degree Doctor of Laws, honoris causa.
President of France, the President of Boston University, the conferral of an honorary degree.
Professor Wiesel will now read the citation in French.
François Mitterrand. Il y a 2 siècles, et pendant la même semaine printanière, la Révolution américaine s'achevait avec l'inauguration de George Washington et la Révolution française commençait avec la convocation des États généraux. L'aide française fut essentielle au succès de la Révolution américaine. Et depuis cette conjoncture historique, nos 2 peuples ont maintenu une amitié à la fois captivante et mutuellement exigeante, non loin de ce qu'on appelle le cousinage. Nous sommes cousins. Et c'est en tant que cousins, entre cousins, qu'un soldat américain, arrivé à Paris le 4 juillet 1917, déclara « Lafayette, we are here ». Au moment où vous arriviez à l'âge d'homme, Monsieur le Président de la République française, la France affrontait le défi le plus grave de sa longue histoire. Pour la France, vous avez versé votre sang à Verdun et vous vous êtes évadé plus d'une fois d'un camp de prisonniers de guerre en Allemagne pour vous joindre à la résistance. La leçon que vous avez tirée de cette expérience, c'est que la liberté n'est pas sans prix, que s'abaisser jusqu'au déshonneur pour éviter la guerre attire et la guerre et le déshonneur, que la paix s'achète au prix de la puissance militaire. Ces leçons vous ont dirigé dans la conduite des affaires étrangères de votre pays. Vous vous êtes toujours déclaré en faveur d'une France dynamique et indépendante, une France qui se veut chef de file dans la création de la nouvelle Europe. Vous avez mené à terme la réconciliation entre la France et l'Allemagne,
President Mitterrand,
commencée et
72 years old,
poursuivie
became
par vos
active in French
prédécesseurs.
politics in 1945 at
Défenseurs des
the
droits
end
de
of
l'homme
the war.
partout, de la
He
dignité
was in the French
de la
army, was
personne
captured
à
by
tous
the
les
Germans,
niveaux.
escaped, joined the
Vous êtes,
resistance, which
Monsieur
is
le
where he
Président de la
met
République française,
Madame Mitterrand,
de
Danielle
cette
Mitterrand.
poignée de dirigeants de l'après-guerre qui ont mérité le titre d'homme d'État à l'échelle de la planète.
Amalia Barretha is down at the
En
platform.
politique
Amalia.
intérieure,
RD, I'm standing with one of the many graduates today, one of the happy graduates today, John Matarazzo, a graduate of the School of Communications. John, tell me what it's like for you here today to have 2 presidents here.
Well, you can't help but be honored with so many dignitaries, not only the 2 presidents, but their wives and Governor Dukakis. I think it's a real honor. You sort of lose sight, though, that at your graduation, because there's so many large figures up there. But I think it's great for all of the students, and I also think it's great for the university. It gives us recognition that I think they otherwise wouldn't have. Sometimes we're overshadowed by the other colleges, but I think this is some just vindication for the school.
Very good. What was your reaction when you first heard? Something typical that John Silver would do, do you think?
Well, we heard that that Bush and Mitterrand were offered to speak, and we didn't think realistically that Bush would accept. And then when he did, well, the campus sort of buzzed with excitement, and everybody was really anxious about what would happen. And I think it was a great honor and also a little bit of a surprise.
Any hassle at all, because the security is so tremendous. What's it been like here for the last few days?
Well, I think initially we were a little in the dark about what would happen with the security and the like, but they handled it real well. Everything went smoothly. I think all my parents got tickets, all my relatives got tickets, and I think everything went very smoothly.
Very good. Thank you very much, and congratulations to you, John.
Thank you, Amalia. President and Mrs. Bush on the platform this morning, listening to the remarks. Mr. Mitterrand is the head of the Socialist Party in France. He worked in politics to unite the left-wing political parties, led to his election, first 7-year term in 1981. He was re-elected last May.
The President of the Republic of France will now address us.
Mr. Mitterrand, with his interpreter, approaching the podium for his remarks.
Monsieur le Président des États-Unis d'Amérique, Monsieur le Président de l'Université de Boston, Mesdames et Messieurs, Mesdemoiselles, Messieurs, les étudiants qui sont ainsi devant moi, je vous dirai, pour commencer, que j'éprouve plaisir et fierté à me trouver ce matin devant vous, dans cette grande et belle université, et pour une cérémonie à laquelle Monsieur le Président des États-Unis et Madame Bush, dont à quelques lieues d'ici j'ai pu goûter l'hospitalité familiale, ont bien voulu s'associer.
President Mitterrand paying tribute to President Bush,
United States,
Barbara
President
Bush,
Silva, ladies, gentlemen, students. I would first of all like to say how very happy and proud I am to be here this morning, here in this great and fine university, and for a ceremony to which the President of the United States and Mrs. Bush have been good enough to associate themselves after having received us with such warmth, only a few leagues away from here.
Je remercie l'Université de Boston de l'honneur qu'elle me fait en me décernant son doctorat honoris causa. En ce 150e anniversaire de votre fondation, comme en ce bicentenaire de notre Révolution française, j'y vois un double signe, celui du savoir et de la liberté, et n'est-ce pas un troisième signe, celui de l'amitié, qui me vaut d'être accueilli en ces lieux par notre cher Elie Wiesel.
I would like to thank Boston University for the honor bestowed upon me today in awarding me the honorary degree honoris causa. This is the 150th anniversary of your foundation and also the bicentennial of our French Revolution. And I think here there is perhaps a dual symbolism, the symbol of knowledge and of freedom. And there is perhaps a third one, which is friendship, the friendship of being welcomed here today by our dear friend Elie Wiesel.
Du Collège de théologie, fondé en 1839, jusqu'à l'université moderne d'aujourd'hui, du premier doctorat obtenu dans ces murs par une femme, jusqu'aux nombreuses étudiantes ici rassemblées, on mesure le chemin parcouru au service d'une noble ambition éducative, tandis que la ville de Boston, parmi tant d'autres privilèges, s'affirme désormais comme l'un des principaux centres universitaires du monde.
Now, from the College of Theology, founded in 1839, to the modern university that you have here today, from the first doctorate awarded to a woman, to the many women students present here today, one can measure the path that has been followed in this great and noble educational ambition. But at the same time, the city of Boston, privileged among so many others, is now, I think one can say, one of the main university centers of the world.
Reçu dans cette ville, j'évoquerai d'un mot l'élan que suscita chez les Français de la fin du XVIIIe siècle le combat des insurgés américains et combien fut précieuse en retour pour notre première République la solidarité de la jeune Amérique. De part et d'autre de l'Atlantique, prenait corps un idéal qu'exprimèrent avec bonheur nos déclarations respectives des droits de l'homme. Dans votre succès, nous perçûmes l'approche du nôtre, ou pour le dire à la façon de Kant, dont vous êtes, Monsieur le Président de l'Université, un familier, nous y vîmes, selon l'expression même du philosophe, que je cite, la preuve de l'aptitude au mieux du genre humain. Dans les convulsions du siècle finissant, apparaissaient radieuses les promesses de la liberté.
Now, as I'm being received here in this city, I would like to say something about the tremendous enthusiasm that was created among the French at the end of the 18th century by the combat waged by the American insurgents. And I would like to say how important it was, the other way around, for our First Republic to enjoy the solidarity of the young American nation. On both sides of the Atlantic, an ideal was taking shape that was extremely well put in our respective declarations on human rights. And it was your success in which we found and we sensed the beginnings, the approach of our own success. And here I would like to quote the philosopher Kant and President Silber. This is a name very familiar to you. And he said that there is proof here of the propensity for improvement of the human race. And I think that in the convulsions of that century that was finishing, one could already begin to see the bright dawn of the promises of freedom.
Et voilà que nous sommes, nous aussi, au tournant d'un siècle et même d'un millénaire, moment qui invite à s'interroger sur soi et sur l'état du monde. Je bornerai mes réflexions, mesdames et messieurs, à cette unique question, posée depuis l'origine des temps: comment expliquer que l'homme qui accomplit tant de progrès dans sa connaissance de la matière et qui présente chaque jour davantage la mesure des deux infinis, le grand et le petit, comme l'écrivait notre Blaise Pascal, comment expliquer que l'homme, au risque de se détruire, en détruisant ce qui l'entoure, en maîtrise si peu et si mal les effets?
And now we find ourselves here again at the turn of a century and even at the turn of a millennium. A time which I think is right in order to put questions to oneself about both oneself and the state of the world. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to restrict my thoughts on this for the moment to one single question that was already asked at the beginning of time. How can one explain the fact that man, who has made so much progress in the knowledge of the secrets of matter, and who each day manages to get a better grasp of the two infinites, the infinitely great, large, and the infinitely small, as our Blaise Pascal wrote, how can one explain that man, at the risk of destroying himself while destroying the world that surrounds him, how can one explain that man exercises such inadequate control and such little control over the effects of his own action?
Des maladies, des épidémies, jadis fatales, ont été vaincues. L'espérance de vie moyenne dans les pays industrialisés est passée de 50 à 75 ans. L'ingénierie médicale, le scanner, le laser permettent des investigations et des interventions d'une précision inimaginable. L'homme dispose, avec l'atome, d'une source d'énergie inépuisable. L'informatique multiplie à l'extrême ses capacités de calcul et d'analyse. Depuis la Terre, satellite d'un petit soleil, perdu parmi des milliards d'étoiles, il se lance à la conquête de l'espace et étudie déjà comment le mettre en valeur. Le développement des télécommunications organise la diffusion simultanée de l'information dans tous les points du globe et la relation instantanée entre les hommes, où qu'ils soient. On transforme les modes de production et de communication, on invente des matériaux nouveaux, des sources d'énergie, des moyens de transport sur les chemins de l'univers.
Diseases, epidemics that used to be fatal have now been conquered. The average expectation of life in industrialized countries has increased from 50 to 75 years. Medical engineering, scanners, lasers, all these make possible investigations and interventions of a degree of precision which could hardly have been conceivable only recently. Man with the atom disposes of an inexhaustible source of energy. With computers, he can multiply almost to the infinite his capacity for calculation and analysis. And from this Earth, satellite of a small sun, lost among billions of stars, he is setting out into space for the conquest of space, and at the same time he is already studying how to harness its resources. The development of telecommunications makes possible the simultaneous broadcasting of information to the four corners of the earth at the same time. And it also makes it possible to establish real-time communication between men and women wherever they are. Modes of production and communication are being transformed. New materials are being invented. New sources of energy, new means of transport along the paths of the universe.
Les recherches sur la physique du solide, les architectures informatiques ou celles du rayonnement laissent prévoir des bouleversements plus extraordinaires encore de nos façons de penser et de vivre. Par la biologie moléculaire, on aborde le décryptage du programme génétique qui gouverne la construction des êtres vivants. Cet alphabet de la vie dont les milliards de combinaisons font l'homme ou la fleur, la bactérie ou l'éléphant. C'est sans doute de tous les secrets arrachés à la structure intime de la matière, le plus impressionnant, car il nous mène au seuil du patrimoine héréditaire de l'homme, élève, en même temps que de nouvelles chances de vaincre nos maux, de nouvelles interrogations éthiques sur les droits de l'homme et de l'espèce humaine.
Research on solid physics, on computerized architecture, or on radiation, all these things allow us to hope for even more extraordinary upheavals in the way we think and the way we live. By molecular biology, we're beginning to decipher the genetic program which determines the construction of living beings, this alphabet of life, whose billions of combinations will produce either a man or a flower, a bacteria or an elephant. And of all the secrets that we've managed to extract from matter, the most intimate forms of matter, this is perhaps the most impressive because it brings us to the threshold of our hereditary biological heritage, the heritage of man. And this at the same time brings up new opportunities for conquering the evils and the diseases which beset us, but at the same time, new questions of an ethical nature on the rights of man and the rights of mankind.
Il en va de ces découvertes comme de celles des temps passés. Elles ne sont ni bénéfiques ni diaboliques en elles-mêmes. De l'étude de l'infiniment petit à l'observation des étoiles englouties comme dévorées par les trous noirs de l'immensité sidérale, voilà de quoi l'homme a été capable en ce dernier demi-siècle. Et pourtant, il reste en retard sur la vision de son esprit et sur le génie de ses mains, incapable d'appliquer à la nature, à ses semblables et à lui-même l'imagination, l'audace et l'ambition qu'il déploie partout ailleurs. D'un côté, cet étonnant pouvoir de comprendre l'univers, ses moyens scientifiques et techniques inégalés, cette mise en évidence croissante des interdépendances de fait, de l'autre, la persistance et parfois l'aggravation des injustices et des inégalités, la folie des fanatismes et des terrorismes, la destruction de la nature et toujours et partout la dérisoire et mortelle volonté de puissance.
Now these discoveries are like any other discoveries in the past. In themselves, they're neither good nor diabolical. And indeed, from the study of the infinitely small to the observation of stars engulfed, devoured, as it were, by the black holes of the immensity of sidereal space. Now that is what man has been capable of studying and doing in the last 50 years. And yet, despite all this, all these achievements, he is lagging behind as compared to the vision of his mind and the genius of his hands. He is as yet apparently incapable of applying to nature, to his fellow beings, and indeed to himself, the imagination and the audacity and the ambition that he demonstrates in all other fields. On the one hand, we have this fantastic power of understanding the universe, these modern technical and unequaled scientific achievements and capabilities, this increasing demonstration of the interdependence between all things. But on the other hand, we have the persistence and sometimes indeed the worsening of injustice, of inequality, of the insanity of fanaticism and terrorism, the destruction of nature, and always and everywhere the ridiculous, puny and fatal will for power.
L'espèce humaine est la seule à avoir évolué au point de n'être plus le jouet de la sélection naturelle. Mais les développements économiques, technologiques mal dominés altèrent les équilibres qui ont permis cette évolution. Et nous nous en accommodons. Certes, l'horreur d'un tremblement de terre, les ravages d'une inondation, le désespoir de populations prises en otage par des amis rivales, l'infamie des camps de concentration, éveillent pour un temps, pour une cause, et en un lieu donné, de formidables élans de solidarité. Et puis, comme je le disais à l'instant, on s'accommode. On s'accommode de la misère où s'épuisent les 2/3 de l'humanité. On s'accommode du fossé grandissant qui sépare riches et pauvres, individus, groupes sociaux, nations ou continents. On s'accommode de la dégradation des équilibres naturels, de l'exploitation de l'homme par l'homme, de la violence comme moyen et comme fin.
The human species is the only one that has evolved to the extent that it is no longer determined by natural selection, but the technological developments that have not been sufficiently controlled now begin to upset the very equilibria that has made such evolution possible. And we tend to live with this. It's true that when there is the horror of an earthquake, ravages caused by serious flooding, or the despair of whole populations taken hostage by rival armies, the shame of concentration camps, it is true that for a time and for a cause and for a given place, there are tremendous bursts of solidarity. And then, as I was saying a moment ago, one gets used to the idea. One learns to live with all this. One learns to live with the idea of the extreme poverty, the misery that is exhausting 2/3 of mankind. One gets used to the idea of the increasing gap between rich and poor, be they individuals, social groups, nations, or continents. One learns to live, apparently, with this deterioration of one's natural equilibria, with the exploitation of man by man, indeed with violence, considered both as a means and an end.
Bref, nous n'avons pas réussi, l'avons-nous seulement cherché, à adapter nos comportements au rythme des mutations que nous avons nous-mêmes provoquées. Vous disant cela, s'imposent à mon esprit 2 exemples, 2 problèmes que chefs d'État et de gouvernement, responsables des affaires du monde, nous avons à traiter dans les semaines et les mois prochains, et dont j'attends que l'on se saisisse autrement qu'on ne l'a fait jusqu'alors. D'une part, le sous-développement et son corollaire, l'endettement, qui frappe d'impuissance et de malheur 3 milliards d'êtres humains, et qui exige de nous, pays plus riches, que nous prenions enfin conscience de notre devoir et de notre intérêt. D'autre part, la pollution de la nature qui bientôt n'épargnera personne et qui commande un plan de sauvetage d'extrême urgence.
Well, we have not succeeded, have we even tried, to adapt our behavior to the rhythm of the mutations that man himself has caused. Now, in saying this, what comes to mind are two problems, which as heads of state and government responsible for world affairs, we will have to deal with in the coming weeks and coming months. And it is my wish that we will be able to attack these problems differently from the way we have done so in the past. And these two problems are, first of all, underdevelopment and what goes with it, the debt, which brings powerlessness and misfortune to 3 billion human beings, and which in fact requires that all of us in the rich countries, we should at last become fully aware of our duty and our interest. And then secondly, there is the pollution of the environment, from which soon no one will be able to escape, and which requires, and as a matter of extreme urgency, an emergency plan to save the environment.
Répétons ces vérités premières, si évidentes qu'on les oublie. Il n'y a qu'une humanité sur la Terre, et cette Terre, c'est la nôtre. Entendant la main, comme l'aveugle qui cherche à deviner l'obstacle, nous touchons en naissant le terme de notre existence, tandis qu'un je ne sais quoi d'éternel nous invite en nous-mêmes à considérer l'univers comme s'il était notre jardin devant la porte de notre maison. La mort de l'environnement, c'est la nôtre. Que sommes-nous, sinon la nature elle-même, comme l'orme et le chêne, le cheval et l'abeille, comme la rose et le réséda, comme tout être vivant, animal, végétal, utile, nuisible, indifférent. Oui, la Terre est notre planète. Soyons plus forts que notre nouvelle puissance de destruction. C'est ce que la France a voulu faire à La Haye, aux Pays-Bas, quand avec 23 autres pays, nous avons demandé au mois de mars dernier qu'une autorité mondiale prit en charge le sort commun. C'est à quoi, comme beaucoup d'autres, je vous invite.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, there are some obvious truths that I think we should repeat. They are so obvious that one tends to forget them. And that is that there is only one human race on Earth, and this Earth is our Earth. And as from the moment when we are born, as we move forward like the blind man with outstretched hands trying to sense the obstacle, we can term the end of our existence. But at the same time, there is within us something of the eternal, which causes us to consider the universe as if it were our garden, in fact, just in front of the door of our house. The death of the environment is our death. What are we if not nature itself? Like the elm and the oak, the horse, the bee, the rose, the thorn bush, like any living being, animal, plant, useful, harmful, indifferent. Yes, indeed, the earth is our planet. So let us save it. Let us prove ourselves stronger than our new power of destruction. And that is what France I would invite you to join.
Dans l'enthousiasme des découvertes scientifiques, beaucoup ont cru que les siècles suivants récolteraient les beaux fruits du progrès. Mais on sait aujourd'hui que l'homme a dans le même temps accru son pouvoir de vie et de mort. De l'autodestruction au sursaut salvateur, l'éventail des possibilités reste ouvert. La liberté et la responsabilité de l'homme s'y inscrivent.
In the enthusiasm of scientific and technical discoveries, many people thought that future centuries would reap the wonderful fruits of progress. But we now know that man has at the same time increased his power of life and death, from self-destruction to the leap to salvation. The range of possibilities open to us is wide open. For man, liberty and responsibility must go together.
On a parlé de désenchantement du monde. Mais si s'offrait au contraire à l'humanité une nouvelle grande aventure, et si le XXIe siècle, instruit de nos impasses comme de nos succès, offrait enfin l'occasion d'une morale et pourquoi pas d'une politique à hauteur d'homme. L'humanité possède les moyens de sa prospérité et le ressort de sa survie. Sa longue histoire lui montre qu'il n'est pas de maladie invincible, pas de misère inéluctable, pas de dictature qui ne finisse par céder, pas de paix inaccessible. Le prouve ce qui se passe presque à l'heure où je parle, pour le désarmement, par exemple, entre les blocs hostiles. Et je salue les hommes d'État qui l'ont voulu, Ronald Reagan, George Bush, Mikhail Gorbatchev. Ce qui se passe chez nous, en Europe, où 12 pays, en s'unissant, lancent un défi à leur histoire. Ce qui se passe enfin partout où la liberté refuse d'être plus longtemps étouffée.
People have talked about the disenchantment of the world. And what if, on the contrary, for clear-sighted humanity, we were not on the threshold of a great new adventure? And what if the 21st century, enlightened by our dead ends and our successes in the past, what if it, in fact, at last gave us the opportunity of establishing moral and why not political values to the measure of man himself? Mankind has the means to ensure its prosperity. It has the energy to ensure its survival. And its long history demonstrates that there is no disease that cannot be conquered, no misery that is unavoidable, no dictatorship that does not ultimately give in, no peace that is inaccessible. And this indeed is proven by what is happening almost at this very time in the field of, for example, disarmament between hostile blocs. And I wish to pay tribute to the statesmen who have wanted this to happen: Ronald Reagan, George Bush, Mikhail Gorbachev. And there is also what is happening among our European countries, where 12 countries have united themselves in order to challenge, one might say, their own history. And there is also proof of this in what is happening everywhere in the world, at every moment, every time that liberty refuses to be continually and constantly stifled. And all this, I think, demonstrates what I've just said.
Dans cette université de Boston, je dis aux jeunes qui par milliers se forment aux disciplines de l'esprit pour acquérir bien davantage qu'un avenir professionnel, cela dépend aussi de vous. Il le savait bien, Thomas Paine, cet Anglais en colère, qui se fit américain aux côtés des insurgés et vint ensuite prêter main forte à notre révolution, qu'il n'y a pas de fatalité pour ceux qui décident de prendre leur destin en main. Dans sa célèbre brochure en faveur de l'indépendance des États-Unis, il appelait cela tout simplement le common sense.
Here in Boston University, I would say to the young men and women who in their thousands are training in the disciplines of the mind in order to acquire far more than their own professional future. All this depends on you. And this is something that Thomas Paine knew well. This Englishman, this Anglo-Englishman who became American to fight alongside the insurgents and who then came to give us a hand in our revolution. He knew that there is no such thing as fatality for those who decide to take their fate into their own hands. And in his famous writings for the independence of the United States, he called that something very simple, common sense.
J'avais 10 ans quand on m'a enseigné à l'école de mon village que science sans conscience n'est que ruine de l'âme. J'en ai plus de 70 et je n'en ai guère appris davantage, sinon de simples choses comme celle-ci, que la science, elle aussi, nous aide à corriger la science, qu'on a besoin de liberté, comme on respire, mais que la liberté ne vit que par le droit, enfin que l'ordre n'est que désordre sans la justice. C'est William Faulkner qui conclura pour moi du regard tandis qu'on les poursuit.
I was 10 years old when I was taught in the village school that science without conscience is nothing but the ruin of the soul. I am now over 70, and quite honestly, I don't think that I have learned very much else, except perhaps a few simple things. That science itself can help us to correct science, that we need freedom, just as we need air to breathe, but that freedom can only live under the rule of law, and that order is nothing but disorder without justice. I will take my conclusion from Faulkner, who said something to the effect that the supreme wisdom is to have dreams that are large enough so as never to lose sight of them while one is chasing them.
Mesdames et messieurs, il me reste, en vous disant à plus tard, à féliciter les étudiants qui ont reçu leur diplôme. Ainsi que les lauréats. Je remercie. Nous avons applaudi l'hospitalité de Boston, de l'université de Boston. De son président, de ses professeurs, de ses élèves aussi. Je remercie enfin le président George Bush et madame, que je connais depuis déjà quelques années et dont je connais les grands mérites. Je les remercie d'avoir été auprès, une fois de plus, de leur ami, la France. Merci.
George Bush, your life has been one of choices courageously taken. Instead of a secure classroom at Yale, you chose to join the Navy on your 18th birthday and became its youngest aviator. When your torpedo bomber was hit by Japanese fire, you completed your mission rather than turn back. Instead of a family job on Wall Street, you chose the oil fields of West Texas, where, beginning your career as a warehouse clerk, you went on to found a company to which you gave the revolutionary name Zapata. Entering politics, you took on both the Democratic United Nations. You chose the daunting diplomatic challenge of an embassy to Beijing when you might have had a less honoris causa. Congressman, you chose to support fair housing in the face of angry heckling from your constituents. Following your term as ambassador to the United Nations, you chose the daunting diplomatic challenge of an embassy to Beijing when you might have had a less demanding appointment to London or Paris. In China, you determined to meet and know the people. You chose the bicycle over the limousine. Then, when President Ford called on you to restore the morale and reputation of the CIA, you accepted that challenge and became Director of Central Intelligence. We honor you for your genuineness and for your determined pursuit of independence. We honor you for the wisdom that foregoes flamboyance in order to achieve results through working with others, and for the courage, when the odds are against you, to fight on. Today, Americans search for paths to follow, questioning whether there are any. Your life provides an answer. Often you have been offered the easy way, always you have refused. You chose the more challenging but better way. We trust you always will. We look to you now to lead our nation where you have told us it can and should go. Your vision of a kinder, gentler, and still stronger America is worthy of all our efforts. Your call for the reform and strengthening of our educational system must be heeded if we are to survive as a free nation. Mr. President, for the choices you have made, with high expectations and fervent prayers for the choices you will make, Boston University proudly confers on you the Doctor of Laws degree honoris causa. It is now my privilege to call on President Bush to address this assembly.
Thank you, President Silver. President and Madame Mitterrand, it's a great honor to have you here today. To Governor Dukakis, my respects. The Chief Executive of this great state and my friend as well. To Mayor Flynn, His Eminence Cardinal Law, and Dr. Metcalf, Dr. Wiesel, and yes, Kimberly, to you for that wonderful speech earlier on, and to Nancy Joachim, who rendered both the Marseillaise and the Star-Spangled Banner in such fine way. It's a pleasure to be back in Boston, back in one of my home states, and I am delighted and honored to receive a Doctor of Laws from Boston University, along with President Mitterrand. Doctor of Laws. Does this now make us a couple of Boston lawyers, my friend Mitterrand? Who knows? I also would like to salute another most distinguished visitor, Prime Minister Mahathir of Malaysia, a friend of the United States whose son is graduating today. We're honored to have him here. congratulate Barbara on a BU degree of her very own. Now that you're an alumna, take note. This kinder and gentler America that I'm speaking of does not always include the carriers. My sincerest congratulations go to every Boston University graduate, to all you proud parents cooking out along the 50-yard line there. And as Boston University graduates, you take with you a degree from a great institution and something more. Something more, knowledge of the past and responsibility for the future. Take a look at our world today. Nations are undergoing changes so radical. The international system you know, will know in the future, will be as different from today's world is from the time of Woodrow Wilson. How will America prepare then for the challenges ahead? With your future in mind, that after deliberation and a review, we are adapting our foreign policies to meet this challenge. I have outlined how we're going to try to promote reform in Eastern Europe, how we're going to work with our friends in Latin America. In Texas, I spoke to another group of graduates of our new approach to the Soviet Union, one of moving beyond containment to seek to integrate the Soviets into the community of nations and help them share the rewards of international cooperation. But today I want to discuss the future of Europe, that mother of nations and ideas that is so much a part of America. And it is fitting that I share this forum with a very special friend of the United States, President Mitterrand. You have the warm affection and high regard of the American people. And I remember well about 8 years ago when you joined us in Yorktown in 1981 to celebrate the bicentennial of that first Franco-American fight for freedom. Soon I will join you in Paris, sir, to observe the 200th anniversary of the French struggle for liberty and equality. This is just one example of the special bond between two continents. But consider this city, the Old North Church, the Paul Revere's home nestled in the warm heart of the Italian North End, your famous song-filled Irish pub. The old and new world are inseparable in this city. But as we look back to old world tradition, we must look ahead to a new Europe. Historic changes will shape your careers and your very lives. The changes that are occurring in Western Europe are less dramatic than those taking place in the East, but they are no less fundamental. A post-war order that began in 1945 is transforming into something very different. And yet certain essentials remain, because our alliance with Western Europe is utterly unlike the cynical power alliances of the past. It is based on far more than the perception of a common enemy. It is a kind of culture, kinship, and shared values. As we look towards the 21st century, Americans and Europeans alike should remember the words of Raymond Aron, who called the alliance a moral and spiritual community. Our ideals are those of the American Bill of Rights and the French Declaration of the Rights of Man. And it is precisely because the ideals of this community are universal that the world is in ferment today. Now, a new century holds the promise of a united Europe. And as you know, the nations of Western Europe are already moving toward greater economic integration with the ambitious goal of a single European market in 1992. The United States has often declared it seeks a healing of
of old enmities, an integration of Europe, and at the same time there has been an hysterical ambivalence on the part of some Americans towards a more united Europe. To this ambivalence has been added apprehension at the prospect of 1992. But whatever others may think, this administration is of one mind. We believe a strong, united Europe means a strong America. Western Europe has a gross domestic product that is roughly equal to our own and a population that exceeds ours. European science leads the world in many fields, and European workers are highly educated and highly skilled. We are ready to develop with the European community and its member states new mechanisms of consultation and cooperation on political and global issues, from strengthening the forces of democracy in the Third World, to managing regional tensions, to putting an end to the division of Europe. A resurgent Western Europe is an economic magnet drawing Eastern Europe closer toward the Commonwealth of free nations. A more mature partnership with Western Europe will pose new challenges. There are certain to be clashes and controversies over economic issues. America will, of course, defend its interests, but it is important to distinguish adversaries from allies and allies from adversaries. What a tragedy. What an absurdity it would be if future historians attribute the demise of the Western Alliance to disputes over beef hormones and wars over pasta. We must all work hard to ensure that the Europe of 1992 will adopt the lower barriers of the modern international economy, not the high walls and the moats of medieval commerce. But our hopes for the future rest ultimately on keeping the peace in Europe. 42 years ago, just across the Charles River, Secretary of State George Marshall gave a commencement address that outlined a plan to help Europe recover. Western Europe responded heroically and later joined with us in a partnership for the common defense, a shield we call NATO. This alliance has always been driven by a spirited debate over the best way to achieve peaceful change, but the deeper truth is that the alliance has achieved historic peace because it is united by a fundamental purpose. Behind the NATO shield, Europe has now enjoyed 43 years of conflict, 40 years free of conflict, the longest period of peace the continent has ever known. Behind this shield, the nations of Western Europe have risen from privation to prosperity, all because of the strength and resolve of free people. With a Western Europe that is now coming together, we recognize that new forms of cooperation must be developed. We applaud the defense cooperation developing in the revitalized Western European Union, whose members work with us to keep open the sea lanes of the Persian Gulf. And we applaud the growing military cooperation between West Germany and France. And we welcome British and French programs to modernize their deterrent capability and their moves towards cooperation in this area. It is perfectly right and proper that Europeans increasingly see their defense cooperation as an investment in a secure future. But we do have a major concern of a different order. There's a growing complacency throughout the West. And of course, your generation can hardly be expected to share the grip of past anxiety. With such a long peace, it is hard to imagine how it could be otherwise. But our expectations in this rapidly changing world cannot race so far ahead that we forget what is at stake. There's a great irony here. While an ideological earthquake is shaking asunder the very communist foundation, the West is being tested by complacency. We must never forget that twice in this century, American blood has been shed over conflicts that began in Europe. we share the fervent desire of Europeans to relegate war forever to the province of distant memory. That is why the Atlantic Alliance is so central to our foreign policy. And that's why America remains committed to the alliance and the strategy which has preserved freedom in Europe. We must never forget that to keep the peace in Europe is to keep the peace for America. NATO's policy of flexible response keeps the United States linked to Europe and lets any would-be aggressors know that they will be met with any level of force needed to repel their attack and frustrate their designs. And our short-range deterrent forces based in Europe and kept up to date demonstrate that America's vital interests are bound inextricably to Western Europe, and the attacker can never gamble on a test of strength with just our conventional forces. Though hope is now running high for a more peaceful continent, the history of this century teaches Americans and Europeans to remain prepared. As we search for a peace that is enduring, I'm grateful for the steps that Mr. Gorbachev is taking. If the Soviets advance solid and constructive plans for peace, then we should give credit where credit is due. We're seeing sweeping changes in the Soviet Union that show promise of enduring, of becoming ingrained. At the same time, in an era of extraordinary change, we have an obligation to temper optimism, and I am optimistic, with prudence. For example, the Soviet foreign minister informed the world last week that his nation's commitment to destroy SS-23 missiles under the recently enacted INF treaty may be reversible. And the Soviets must surely know the results of failure to comply with this solemn agreement. Perhaps their purpose was to divide the West on other issues that you're reading about in the papers today. But regardless, it is clear that Soviet new thinking has not yet totally overcome the old. I believe in a deliberate, step-by-step approach to East-West relations, because recurring signs show that while change in the Soviet Union is dramatic, it's not yet complete. The Warsaw Pact retains a nearly 12-to-1 advantage over the Atlantic Alliance in short-range missiles and rocket launchers capable of delivering nuclear weapons, and more than a 2-to-1 advantage in battle tanks. And for that reason, we will also maintain, in cooperation with our allies, ground and air forces in Europe as long as they are wanted and needed to preserve the peace in Europe. At the same time, my administration will place a high and continuing priority on negotiating a less militarized Europe, one with a secure conventional force balance at lower levels of forces. Our aspiration is a real peace, a peace of shared optimism, not a peace of armed camps. (1992), the 500th anniversary of the discovery of the New World. So we have 5 centuries to celebrate, nothing less than our very civilization. The American Bill of Rights, French Rights of Man, the ancient and unwritten Constitution of Great Britain, the democratic visions of Conrad Adenauer and Alcide de Gasperi. And in all our celebrations, we observe one fact. This truly is a moral and spiritual community. It is our inheritance. And so let us protect it. Let us promote it. Let us treasure it for our children, for Americans and Europeans yet unborn. We stand with France as part of a solid alliance. And once again, let me say how proud I am to have received this degree from this noble institution and to have shared this platform with the President of the French Republic, François Mitterrand. Thank you very, very much. Vive la France!